Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you for being here with us this morning at these weekly chats that we are hosting, our third event with weekly chats, CCA Que Pasa weekly chats on Latin America. So today we are having a conversation on Guyana. Guyana is a very important market of these different developments happening right now with companies like Exxon having an important presence there. An important future for the country. 3 weeks ago, approximately, we had with us Natalia Seepersaud with the new Canadian Guyana Chamber of Commerce, and we have a conversation, but we want to know more about Guyana, and this is the reason because we are today hosting this event. And remember that we are putting together these events to have more meaningful conversations, frequent conversations with our members and potential new members. And also just to be connected. I think right now that there are some restrictions in traveling and different restrictions for business development. We think that it's very important to stay connected and potentially identify potential partners, business opportunities, etc. And with that, today with me, well, we want to welcome, of course, Natalia Seepersaud that is here with us. And thank you, Natalia, for accepting the invitation.
Good morning, Miguel, Karen.
Good morning. Thank you. And I have my colleague here, part of the CCA Board of Directors, Karen Fosado, that is going to moderate the session. And she's also a Business Development Director with Rainmaker Global Business Development. And thank you, Karen. And I'm going to leave it with you right now. It looks like people is having some issues to enter into the link. We are just making changes in our new system. I'm going to leave you, Karen, here, and you can start the conversation, and I'm going to try to fix whatever is there. Okay, thank you very much, and look forward for the conversation.
Thanks, Miguel. Sounds good. Let me just start off by giving a really brief overview of Guyana. Guyana is in the it's in South America, but officially it's known as the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and also part of mainland Caribbean region, bordered by the Atlantic Ocean on the north, Brazil to the south, Venezuela to the west, and Suriname to the east. It is the only South American nation in which English is the official language. Its capital is Georgetown. And Guyana was once one of the poorest countries in South America, but in very recent years, the country has been experiencing impressive economic growth due to a very large offshore oil discovery. This morning, we're pleased to have Natalia with us as our guest in this third in the CCA Alberta's weekly chat series. So Natalia Seepersaud is the inaugural Chief Executive Officer of the Canada-Guyana Chamber of Commerce, the CGCC, which is a nonpartisan institution whose mandate is to promote and facilitate investment and trade between Guyana and Canada. Prior to joining the CGCC, Natalia held several public service portfolios in Guyana, including Deputy Chief Executive Officer to the Guyana Office for Investment and Deputy Chief Executive Officer and in-house legal counsel for the Government of Guyana owned National Commercial and Investments Limited, where she was on the project team for several national development projects, including the Marriott Hotel and several state-owned industrial estates. So Natalia, I'm going to kick it off by asking you if you could give us a quick update and a quick history, actually, of the offshore oil discovery that is catapulting Guyana into the spotlight.
Well, ExxonMobil started its gas exploration activities in Guyana in 2008. They did their first drilling of their exploration well in 2005. That was the Liza-1. And since in exploration well in 2015, and since May 2015, they've discovered they've had 18 discoveries. They began production in 2019 with the Liza Phase 1 development. And this is in the Starbrook block. That's 6.6 million acres, and it's about 150 kilometers off the coast of Guyana. So the Starbuck block, that's ExxonMobil has a 45% interest in it. Hess has 30%, and CNOOC Petroleum Guyana Limited has a 25% interest. In terms of the Starbuck block, they're saying there's more than 8 billion oil equivalent barrels, including the Liza and the other 18 wells. The wells are interestingly named because they're named like Payara, Snook, Turbo, Longtail. Apparently they're naming the wells according to whatever fish is in the vicinity at the time of the discoveries. So that's why they have these unusual names. Exxon is also an operator, as in addition to the Starbuck block, there's a Kanji block, there's a Kaichor block, and an Oranduke block, all offshore Guyana, where Exxon is an operator. So the Kanji block is 4,800 square kilometers. Exxon has a 35% interest. Total has a 35% interest. JHI Associates has 17.5% interest. Mid-Atlantic Oil and Gas has a 12.5% interest. And in January 2021, the Stena Carron drill ship arrived on location and commenced drilling operations offshore. In terms of the Kaichor block, there's 3.3 million acres, and that's adjacent to the Starbuck block. Exxon has 35% interest there. Catalea Energy has a 25% interest, and Ratio Guyana has a 25% interest, along with Hess that has a 15% interest. I'll have to tell you right now that JHI is a CGCC member, as is CGX and Catalea Energy. So 3 of the oil exploration companies that are from Canada are CGCC members. The Oranduke block is 1,800 square kilometers, and that is owned by 60% Tullow, 25% Total, and 15% Eco Guyana. So right now, the unlicensed acreages in terms of what's offshore are fairly limited. There's an area known as Block C, and there was an area in the Kanji block that was relinquished by Exxon in 2019. So the government has been saying that it will start auctioning off blocks, but it's unsure as to when that would happen. They said this year, but we haven't really heard any more news about that. Let's see, what else?
Would that sort of notice be posted on the CGCC website?
Yeah, well, we try to post things. Well, first of all, we send it out to our members, and then we'll post maybe a day or two later. You know, it's generally public, but it depends on where you hear it first, because mostly for tenders, etc., they advertise in the national newspapers. You normally see it in the newspapers first, and then you might see it on a ministry website or whatever. And then sometimes the timelines are really tight. You know, for instance, they advertised the expression of interest for the Quarantine Bridge, and it was like a 2-week deadline. And
that was going to be one of my questions to you, was to give us an update on the Quarantine Bridge. But I see that they've already started announcing the recipients or the letters that they've received, letters of
they said, I think they said they received 30 expression of interest so far. And I know while they had it was very strange. You submitted it, you had to submit your EOI, but you had to submit it in soft and hard copy. So I think that's an issue, obviously, for a lot of people, because their hard copies are not going to get down, even if they courier it in time, unless they have somebody on the ground who's submitting it for them. I noticed that there was an extension to March 1st for them to receive the hard copies, but it was still unclear to me whether or not they had to receive a hard copy both in Suriname and in Guyana, or if in one country was good enough. So like those are the weird little nuances that could sometimes be problematic for companies.
So I want to come back to the Quarantine Bridge project in a few minutes, but first, can I circle back and just talk a little bit, or get you to sort of explain to us how the offshore discovery, has impacted the country's economy?
Well, let's just say 2020 was the first full year of operations. The GDP in 2020 was estimated to have grown by 43.5%, while the non-oil economy contracted by 7.3%.
That's incredible.
It is. Mining and quarrying expanded by 303.7% in 2020. And it's felt that a lot of that growth was driven by oil and gas support service industries, because obviously there would be stone, et cetera, that's needed for construction. So that's how it's being felt. For 2021, the oil and gas subsector is projected to grow by 46.7%, because the daily rate of production is expected to be over 109,000 barrels of oil per day.
And the rising price of oil is probably not hurting that number much.
No, it's not. It's considering where we were, I think at the end of last year, beginning of this year, everybody's really happy. Let's see, from 2019, oil and gas support service industries grew by 2,603%. So the growth has been phenomenal. In spite of the COVID-19 restrictions and issues, things are happening on the ground in Guyana, and a lot of companies. There are quite a few Europeans that got stranded in Guyana for a couple of weeks because they came down to do some on the ground exploration and site visits, etc. And then they were, they've been stuck here for a couple of weeks now. But the thing is, they're still continuing. I guess it gives them a reason to continue with their program. So they're getting even more in depth than they were originally, in terms of looking for sites, locations, scouting locations for their companies, finding strategic partnerships, linking with people, etc. Because businesses are open in Guyana, where people are wearing masks, they're getting their temperature checked at the door, etc. But everything is still happening. We haven't slowed down. So I don't think we can afford to.
Yeah, I know. No, the train has left the station and there's no stopping it.
Yeah.
What are sort of the travel logistics coming in and out of the country? You mentioned that some of these people were stuck in the country.
Well,
has that changed at all, or are things improving, or
it's not really, it's not really, let me put it this way. It's not really an issue with Guyana in terms of people coming in. You have to do COVID-19 testing, and the government needs to know where to find you in case your test results come back positive. Because you do get tested, but you have to show a test result prior to getting here. But I have friends and business acquaintances that are coming from the US, and they're coming down here at least once a month. So they would have gone through 18, 20 tests or whatever. So it's just in terms of like let's look at Canada, for instance. Even if you get in, you're not sure you're getting back out, right? Or how you're traveling, et cetera. So the uncertainty, I'd say, with the lockdown in Canada, that's preventing a lot of companies from putting boots on the ground locally. And that's where we're getting a lot of interest in terms of the chamber also, because people are reaching out to us for information and for help with connecting them with other businesses that are already here, or local Guyanese indigenous businesses that can help them. During this sort of vacuum that's there. So, like I said, the countries where people are able to travel, they're coming in, and there's places for them to stay. The hotels are open, and you have to take your precautions, of course, but
So there's no mandatory quarantine period for anybody coming in?
There was, but as long as you're tested before you come into the country, there isn't.
Yeah, right. Okay, I want to come back to the economic impacts of this massive offshore discovery, and can you describe some of the pinch points that are happening in the economy there as a result of this, like, just astronomical growth?
Well, the government has they've sort of laid out this transformational development plan that they have, which is, it's good, but of course the problems that we have is that currently we have the legal and regulatory framework is not up to snuff to deal with what's coming into us. Institutional capacity and regulations, they have to be addressed. Public finances, potentially economic competitiveness in terms of price levels and the real exchange rate, as opposed to what you see on the websites, et cetera, because as more activity comes along, we require more US dollars, and that can sometimes be problematic locally in real terms. So we're looking at increased migration inflows, greater, and we have a lot of inflow of people from let's just say from Haiti, Venezuela, Brazil. We have a great inflow of people coming into the country, but not necessarily in a regulated manner, because Venezuela has its issues right now, so we have a lot of refugees on the border, and Haiti is sort of like a transport point. Sometimes they come in, but they end up, the Haitians end up going to Brazil. Some stay. So and especially when we're dealing with COVID and we're trying to keep our borders tight, these are all problems that we're dealing with. There's going to be, sorry.
So without actually ever seeing Georgetown or Guyana, the country, I'm imagining this economic activity and the hustle and bustle and the logistical gaps that are occurring. And the only sort of analog that I can think of is Fort McMurray, when our oil sands operations were sort of in the height of their activity, and the city of Fort McMurray just had so many struggles in terms of housing workers and dealing with just the economic explosion that was going on, and being able to keep up with that from all kinds of different sort of structural and logistical bases. And I'm just wondering if that is something that's similar that is happening in Georgetown.
I think it's very similar, because we're going to have a greater electricity demand, greater housing demand. We're subject to rolling blackouts sometimes. A lot of large businesses, they have their own power generation system. They don't depend on the national grid because it's too much of a hindrance for business. You're seeing a greater housing demand. Locally, there's a lot of local businesses or just individuals see that housing is going to become an issue, so they've started building, maybe duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes. We're not seeing any huge apartment buildings or anything here right now, but you're seeing a lot of construction going on. Trying to find a location for your business is a very difficult thing, because the price, the cost of rentals is just, it's phenomenal. You're looking at maybe 250, 300 US a square foot. $2.50, $3 US a square foot. Sorry, I'm thinking in Guyana dollars in my head here, but but it adds up. So I mean, let's see, I think there was somebody was looking for space, and they told me that someone was offering them 500 square feet for $1,500 US per month, and they felt that was
astronomical.
You know,
So how is this impacting sort of the local Guyanese population? These are, affordable for foreign workers coming in.
Well, let me just say this. In terms of, there's a huge gap between housing for the locals and housing for expats, so to speak, because there's a different standard internationally as opposed to, a local standard. So it's affecting the locals insofar as, where they might have been able to rent a house at a lower cost, and because we have a large extended families here that may, multiple households in one house, and if they're renting, it impacts them greatly. The people at the bottom of the rung will suffer because, if I have an empty house now, maybe I don't want to rent it to multiple family home. Maybe I want to convert it into apartments, and I want to rent it to expats. But the government is addressing that, by trying to do low income housing. I think their plan is 5,000 low income houses per year. So, to address that this is going to be an issue with its citizens. And it's also, helping by giving out house lots to citizens.
Can you give us a little bit of an explanation on how the Canada-Guyana Chamber of Commerce was formed? It's brand new. It was formed in December, as I understand it. And what are the major objectives of this chamber? What's your mandate for this first year?
Well, let's just say that in terms of the Chamber of Commerce, we started, I think it was the brainchild of former Canadian High Commissioner to Guyana, Lillian Chatterjee. She thought that with the growing presence of Canadians in Guyana, and on the heels of the discovery of the large offshore oil reserves, that Canada needed to have a greater presence in Guyana, and that there needed to be some sort of private sector organization that was helping to drive Canadian investments, in Guyana. So she got together a bunch of like-minded Canadian and Guyanese businessmen, and she started, this was, I think, in early 2019, and she just started having these breakfast meetings, pre-COVID, and then post-COVID, they were doing it virtually. Then with the plan of launching the chamber, then of course COVID came along, and then things just sort of slowed down. And then they decided that in around September, I think, of last year, they decided that they couldn't wait any longer, that they had to just go because things were already happening, and they didn't want Canadian interests to lose out. So they hired me in September, and then I started in November, and we launched in December. So the idea is to strengthen and promote and foster bilateral trade and investment, as well as economic relations between Canada, Guyana, and other countries. Even though we are the Canada-Guyana Chamber of Commerce, we do have members that are based in, like, say, Trinidad, et cetera. We don't discriminate against our members. We're just looking for linkages for doing business in Canada and in Guyana. And it doesn't matter, what nationality or where a company is from. We have offices both in Canada and Guyana. Right now, obviously, the Canadian office isn't really functioning because of the lockdowns that are happening in the Greater Toronto area. And we facilitate businesses looking for opportunities to increase their trade and investment based on, generally, we're looking at businesses that are expanding from what they're doing right now, looking to expand into Guyana. We have a lot of interest from logistics companies, consulting companies, companies engaged in high-risk securities, as well as the oil and gas, services. They recognize that there's a lot more going on in Guyana than oil and gas, but you know, maybe the money that comes from oil and gas and the investments that can come from the oil and gas money will lead to other spin-offs. We have companies that are reaching out to us that are in ICT, mining, housing, you know, education. It's not just oil and gas centered investments that are happening right now, especially with the rapid transformation that's going to be required in Guyana.
A lot of infrastructure is going to be
right
on the horizon. I see when I look at the Chamber's website, I see a lot of representation from Atlantic Canada, and obviously the CCA Alberta represents Alberta businesses. Is that because of the offshore nature of the oil discovery, or is there something else here going on? What can we do to get more interest from Alberta?
Well, I think in terms of Newfoundland and Labrador, they've been coming down to Guyana, as far as I'm aware, since about 2016. And it is because of the offshore nature of the discovery, but there's also a socio-economic history that Newfoundland and Labrador shares with Guyana. You know, in terms of, if you recall, in the 70s, it was basically a poor fishing, they had a fishing industry, and that's sort of like a common thing with Guyana. There's a lot of socioeconomic linkages, and we found that when the Newfoundlanders came down to Guyana, you could see in the interaction that there was like a common value system. But that being said, Canada has such a huge Guyanese diaspora. I mean, I have certain friends who, when they migrated from Guyana, had actually gone to Fort McMurray based on certain occupations that they had. So Canada has a huge history with Guyana and a huge Guyanese diaspora that's in Canada. There's a certain trust that Guyanese feel when it comes to dealing with Canadians that they may not have with you know, with other countries. And I've been told many times by the private sector entities in Guyana that they prefer to do business with Canadians. And I think in terms of the Alberta Chamber, I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly why Alberta you know, wasn't really looking to Guyana before now, but well, the point is you are looking now. And I think there's great opportunities. The CCA has another great opportunity, I think, in that it has that Latin American linkage that it can use along with the Alberta businesses to start moving into the Guyanese market. Because there's a lot of, let's just say, for instance, agriculture. I know there's a lot of Brazilian a lot of Brazilian companies that are into large-scale agriculture that are looking at Guyana. That gives an opportunity for Alberta with its booming, you know, agricultural sector to perhaps partner with a Brazilian company and then move into Guyana, because they're what you might not know of in terms of climate. You have in other expertise, and perhaps the Brazilians can make up for the lack of awareness of the climate or geography, right? So yeah. I see a lot of scope for Alberta here. You know, there's agriculture, energy, technology, services, manufacturing. There's all of those are needed. You know, from the budget that was presented 2 weeks ago, the minister with responsibility for finance said that he saw agriculture sector growing about 5.6% in the coming year, services 5%, manufacturing 7.3%, and that's going to just explode once. Well, we're going to get into that once they do the gas to shore. That's a whole other story.
Yes, thank you for that segue, because that was my next question. You could please give us a bit of an update on the gas to shore project, which is huge and a really, really necessary infrastructure project.
Well, I don't know if you're aware, but electricity tariffs in Guyana range between 25 to 35 cents US per kilowatt hour. And it's one of the highest electricity costs in the region. So it hinders business development and it discourages a lot of multinationals from establishing operations here, because if you want to be profitable, you have to self-generate. And the self-generation itself is a huge, it takes a lot from your bottom line. So Exxon is currently using gas from the Liza field to re-inject into its oil wells and to power its floating production storage and offloading unit, but they're flaring the rest of it.
Oh.
And so it was announced that there would be a gas to shore unit was formed, and they've announced that there's going to be a bidding for the contract to lay the pipelines and the construction of a landing site. And that's expected to come down sometime this month because they want this project to be completed in 2023.
That's aggressive.
It is aggressive. They've identified the former Wales sugar estate on the west bank of Demerara as the site for establishing the power generation plant. I understand that at Wales, there's about 8,000 acres that's available for development. So they're conceptualizing a industrial estate that they can house manufacturing facilities on, and maybe a free trade zone. It's still unclear exactly, how the setup is going to be, because I think they're still looking. They've identified the sites, I guess, maybe through pre-feasibility studies, and then they still need to do further studies in the area. So the main objective is to transport sufficient gas from the Liza project to supply another 200 to 250 megawatts of energy to the national grid. And they're predicting that they would be able to reduce electricity costs in half, which would be, huge for local businesses. They're looking at 160 kilometers of subsea gas pipeline from the deepwater block to the onshore power generation units and other facilities. And they're looking to convert the heavy fuel oil stations that deliver electricity currently to lower production costs.
What is the main source of power generation in terms of feedstock? What's
fossil fuels?
Fossil fuels. So diesel.
Yeah, diesel.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, and I mean, in terms of that, if they actually get the gas to shore, well, they will get the gas to shore going when they get the gas to shore going. So you're looking at saving some $500 million US in imported fuel.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There is at present no refining capacity in Guyana. Is that right?
There is no refining capacity in Guyana. I think if I recall, it was probably 2017, 2018. There was a lot of interest originally, with companies coming and saying they wanted to put a refinery in Guyana, but I think the initial studies showed that it didn't make sense. And you have refineries in Trinidad that are fallow. Basically, they're not being used. So why build in Guyana?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's the heaviness of the oil right now being produced? Do you know?
Well, I'm not an expert on that. I just know that it's quote unquote sweet crude, but I'm not, that's not my area.
Yeah, no, understood. Any other sort of imminent infrastructure projects that are sort of on your horizon that you can let us know about?
Well, I think one thing that that I really want, like I mentioned before, I thought with the Latin American and South American, connections that some of the Alberta businesses may already have. There's discussions about road to Brazil. recently, the Guyanese foreign minister met with his Brazilian counterpart, and they were talked about the modalities of advancing a cooperation agenda between Guyana and Brazil. And so they were looking at areas of infrastructure, trade and investment, health and agriculture, energy, tourism, and security. So, you know, it was a pretty broad spectrum. There's been talk about building a road from Guyana to Brazil to open up that whole part of Brazil to Guyana and to enable the landlocked parts of Brazil to be able to access ports in Georgetown. And it's been going, those talks have been happening since the 80s, but there seems to be a definite political will because of what's happening in terms of oil and gas and the resources that are now available to Guyana that perhaps were not available before, to start working on that road. But those feasibility studies still have to be done. And there's also talk of an optical network from Bovista to Georgetown, so that there would be digital connectivity infrastructure between the two countries. A lot of this, like I said, well, in terms, the digital connectivity is something else, but in terms of physical connectivity of the two countries, you know, these talks have been decades old, but there's never been, I think one of the problems has always been finances for Guyana. And I think, you know, now that with the oil discoveries, it will change, you know, what Guyana can actually deliver. The two things I want to mention is the opening of Guyana to its neighbors. You know, if Guyana can open itself and make travel and logistics between itself and Brazil easier, that's a huge market there, and a huge trade partner that we would be able to have access to. There's already a partial scope agreement with Brazil that's going to be, you know, refined, extended, looked at, and then if Guyana can open itself to neighboring Suriname with its oil discoveries, and then there's Suriname is 550,000 people maybe, so they don't even have, we have a capacity problem, but theirs is even worse. So, you know, my thing is I'm trying to encourage Canadian companies to not just look at Guyana as Guyana. Guyana is more than just the Guyanese market. Guyana is Brazil, Guyana is Suriname, and Suriname is just a couple of years behind us in terms of developing their oil discoveries. And if you can strategically locate yourself on the ground in Guyana, that you would be in a position early on to service, you know, both Guyana and Brazil when it comes to oil and gas. And then you have depending on what kind of business you're in, you still have a Brazilian market you can look to.
It's a nice sort of geographic hub. Suriname's oil discovery also has some onshore components to it, does it not?
It does. I mean, I think theirs is just basically mirroring, you know, how we were developing ours and what's happening. I know there's been a lot of talk about the cooperation between Suriname and Guyana, and you know, the Guyanese president was down there visiting the Surinamese president when they started talking about doing the quarantine bridge. They're also talking about doing a port, a deep water port in the area, and there's some other synergies that they're looking at. The Canada-Guyana Chamber is actually developing a relationship and looking to formalize a relationship between us and the Surinamese BSO, because there are we do have members who are looking to Suriname to expanding their operations into Suriname. And currently we have members that are already doing business in Suriname.
Awesome. I think we have some questions from the audience. Miguel, do you want to take some of those questions?
Sure. Thank you very much, Karen and Natalia. Very, very good overview of Gujana. I have a question before I go into we have like 5 or 6 questions here. I would like to ask about I know that there is a historical probably dispute with Venezuela in terms of territory. How is this relationship right now and the political environment in general in Guyana in terms of supporting business or international investment in the country?
Well, I mean, you know, that's the government is, you know, has gone to the courts, to the world courts when it comes to that. And that's something that, you know, Guyanese are very firm in. We believe that that was settled years ago. And it's just a matter of, you know, holding on and getting our day in court and making sure that things are the way it is. We have a lot of support from, you know, the ABC countries when it comes to Guyana's position and territories when it comes to Venezuela.
That's great. That's great. And the political environment is very supportive of international. The government of Guyana is supportive of
no, the government of Guyana, this current administration has always been very pro-business. You know, without oil, they were pro-business. With oil, they're even more so. They recognize the need that we need to have foreign investment in order to develop. What they want to do is to make sure that Guyanese companies, Guyanese businesses, and the Guyanese people are not left behind. So they're really looking at sustainable development. They're very interested in strategic partnerships and maybe even public-private partnerships. And there is a local content policy that's being developed.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the questions here from Carl. Can you shed some light on the local content policy? Can you expand a little bit more in there?
Well, the local content policy, I mean, you know, I guess with all local content policies, they're trying to find a way to help the local businesses get something from what's happening. But they recognize, I mean, government recognize that there are limitations in terms of, you know, what can be done by indigenous businesses. So it's trying to strike a balance, and to give incentives to foreign investments that have a local component to them. It's still in its it's sort of it's still in its what do you call it, consultation stage. There was a draft that was handed down last week, which I'll be honest with you, I haven't completely read. I think I got halfway through it and then I had to put it down for something else. But one of the big things about it is that, you know, a lot of people are pushing and saying, look, local content isn't just about oil and gas. It's about all our other industries too. And this thing should be holistic.
Mm-hmm. And how is the country in terms of the people of the local industry, the small business and medium-sized business, how they are they more motivated to be engaged in these new developments? It has been a motivation for business to be more competitive, or how is the local business environment?
Well, it has been a motivation, but I think one of the things that would have slowed things down a little bit, because the bustle is going on behind the scenes, I feel, you know, and behind fences, you know, buildings are going up, but there's a huge fence and you don't know what's going on behind it. So I think that pre-COVID, there was a certain buzz and energy that you could feel, but because of the lockdowns from other countries, all this stuff is happening, but I think maybe the public isn't seeing it. But if you're in the business community, it's there. There's a buzz, things are moving, and it's going at a pace, because once economies start opening up again and borders start opening up, we're gonna have to be ready.
Excellent, excellent. Let me go to one of the questions here from Jack Archer. I don't know if you answered previously, but are there plans to bring natural gas to Guyana for power generation?
Well, that was the gas to shore project that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, 2023, they want it done by then. because it's going to have a huge impact in terms of industrialization, in terms of just there's so many things that Guyana cannot do right now, or it's not it can't be competitive in doing because of the cost of electricity. You know, a lot of our produce goes to waste because there's no proper cold storage and things like that. You know, just converting oranges to pulp, things like that is a very difficult thing, and it really not only does it hinder the large producers, it hinders the small producers. It impedes entrepreneurship, the cost of energy.
Correct.
And if the government can bring it down to half and bring it all over the country, that loosens up dollars for businesses to use for other things.
Okay, no, excellent. We have from Alberto, could you please talk about the impact of the 2020 presidential election in the oil and gas industry? And are the PPP, public partnership, open to oil and gas policies?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I understand the second part of that question, but what I will say is that when it comes to public-private partnerships, you know, the government is open to suggestions. They've indicated, you know, areas where they're looking for public-private partnerships, and gas to shore is one of those areas. In terms of the 2020 elections, I think, you know, things have settled down in Guyana. Of course, you know, businesses don't want to see political instability. I don't even know what to say about that, because I voted in the elections. I was here for those very stressful months, and I've never seen anything like it. It dragged on for quite a while, and there is going to be constitutional reform on the agenda in order to try to prevent something like that from happening again. You know, I think the government, I think the Guyanese people recognize that we cannot progress if we take steps back every time we have an election.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Excellent. And from Cesar Vera, it's a long question here. How is the maritime sector being attended? Is mainly foreign vessel owners, local owners, or a mix?
Sorry, how is which sector?
The vessel owners or vessel owners.
Oh, like shipping?
Yeah, I guess so. Foreign vessel owners. And what is the ratio? Who would be the contact to get some matchmaking conversations? Thank you, Cesar Vera.
Well, obviously, I have to say the chamber is your contact for getting, you know, your B2Bs and whatever. So, you know, if you email me after this and tell me exactly what it is that you're looking for, then, you know, we can find some synergies for you in terms of local or other, or even other companies that are currently operating in Guyana that can help. We, you know, like I said, we've had a number of people reaching out to us for different things, and so we try to look at what they're doing and who's existing already on the ground that can help them, or you know, maybe sometimes there's somebody who's not even here yet, but is looking to come here and they want to partner with somebody else in order to get into the market. So it's a mixed bag right now. But as I keep telling everybody, you can't just keep thinking about it and wondering about it. You need to start taking positive steps towards making it happen.
Excellent, excellent.
You know, I spoke to Noya the other day, and I told them, and I'm going to tell you the same thing. The time for tire kicking in Guyana is over because other people are on the ground.
Excellent, excellent. So there are different opportunities in Guyana. We have a question from Benigno Rojas as well. How is the security level for foreign companies to do business in Guyana?
You know, the foreign companies who are doing business in Guyana, you know, they have their own security measures for their, you know, for their executives. Most of them live in gated communities, etc. Generally speaking, this is what I'll say. In terms of security, people don't want trouble by, you know, getting engaged with the police by attacking a foreigner. So there are security concerns, don't get me wrong, but it's not. There's a lot of international NGOs where their personnel like being posted to Guyana, because even though they get paid for being in a high risk area, it is not a high risk area, not like it is in other countries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know,
okay.
You take the usual precautions and you're fine.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. We have more questions about crime. I think you mentioned already. From Signature Sismic, Colombia managed to attract Canadian businesses, primarily oil and gas, for many years, even more than Brazil. Is Guyana making incentives for companies to do business there? Well,
there are incentives for foreign and local investors. They're given equal treatment under the Investment Act. So there are incentives for certain sectors. There's incentives for the energy sector, incentives in agriculture, etc. Oil and gas, it depends, I think, on what it is. Like normally if it's a pioneering something where nobody else is doing it right now, or if it's tied somehow to whatever the production contracts are for Exxon and its partners, then that's something basically between the government and whoever the service company is. But there's a regular list when it comes to other sectors, and it's normally you know, concessions on capital items, machinery, equipment. There's free repatriation of profits and things like that. So
awesome.
It's just it depends on what sector it is, but I know there's a general thought that oil and gas, that's happening. Either you're coming or you're not coming. And you know, it's one of the things I have to tell the Canadian companies is that the Chinese are here, the Americans are here, the Trinidadians are here, the Europeans are here. But
awesome.
maybe Canadians aren't here as much as they need to be.
Okay, we have just Cesar Vera clarifies supply boats or vessels for the oil and gas, but probably you are going to share information with him. And we have a question from Enrique Vergara. If there are, and if so, what are they doing with the waste gas? If being vented or flared? It's
being flared, which is a huge problem for the Guyana EPA.
Okay. Perfect. And we have a raised hand from Tammy. I don't know, maybe Tammy, you want to ask your question directly. I can allow you to talk and you can make your question directly. If you are there, Tammy.
She's on mute.
You're on mute, Tammy. You are welcome to
folks, yourself. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Sorry, it's Les Allen here with LGA Pipeline Consulting. There, it just comes up, Tammy, because it's in the office, one of the desktops that I'm on here. So yeah, I had a few questions. Good morning, by the way. I had a little bit of trouble getting on. I think, Natalia, that link that you gave me wouldn't take me directly to the...
We have just 1 minute for your question, Tammy. Just go ahead, please, with the question.
Okay. Is there a national port that exists in Guyana at this point in time, or where would
it's basically most of what's going on is happening through the private ports.
Okay, so there is room for laydown areas, and the logistics of craneage and whatnot exists there at this point in time?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
But there's a need for more. There's a lot of the coastline is already, being taken up by businesses coming in and looking to, who are already here looking to expand their operations. And like, there's an expansion into the Berbice area now. And if, when the Wales estate, if gas ashore happens there, I think there will be definitely room for ports along that area too.
Okay, excellent. We have 2 minutes basically to go. Thank you very much for the question, Tammy, and everybody. And Karen, you want to wrap up a little bit the conversation, and we can start closing.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to recognize today is actually Guyana's Republic Day. Natalia, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and thank you for actually working today, which you're not supposed to be doing. So really appreciate that. And we recognize Guyana's National Republic Day. So congratulations, or happy Republic Day, whatever the
thank
thing
you.
is.
Well, it's actually we call it Mashramani. It's an Amerindian word. I think it means celebration after the crop or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it means, but that's what it is. It's Happy Mash Day. But look, I just want to say that, thank you for having me. For me, it's not whether or not it's a holiday. I really am very passionate about Canadians coming in to Guyana and the Guyanese market. I know that the value, the ethics, etc., that Canada has, and I want to see Canada doing business with Guyana. I'd rather see Canadians here than anybody else. I mean, I'm Canadian, I'm Guyanese, I'm a little bit of both, and I know what each has to offer the other. And I can't stress enough that we Canadians need to find a way to get down here and to start doing business.
We will do our part as much as we can at this end, and really hope that we can encourage our members to connect with the chamber. And can you just quickly tell us what the URL for that is?
You can email me at well, I was just laughing because my my last name is so difficult for people. But let's just say email me at info @cgcc.gy, and I'll get the message.
Awesome.
Or you can contact me through LinkedIn. I'm fine with that also.
Super.
But
we also we'll have we can probably post a link on our website too, right?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Natalia, for this conversation, and thank you also to Karen Posado for moderating this Guyana session today. Next week, we are having Leonardo Beltran with Sustainable Energy for All, and we are going to have a conversation on the topic of sustainable energy. Hopefully you can join us. And thank you very much. Have a great morning and stay tuned with us. Thank you. Have a great day.